This is the last lecture recording of the semester and the third video of the 10th lecture, which is all about program planning. So in this particular video, we're going to be discussing the planning, implementation, and evaluation phase of the dental hygiene process of care. So after the problem has been identified and the program goals and objectives and the priorities have all been set and established, the next step is really to state how we're going to go about bringing those desired results within the community. So we're going to move to the third phase of the dental hygiene process of care, and that's planning. So basically we're going to create a blueprint or an outline for the dental program, and with this blueprint we're going to start thinking about ways that we're going to conduct the program. So we have different ways that we conduct programs, and all of those could achieve the same results, but we'd have to pick one way that we're going to go ahead and do our oral health promotion program. Then we're also going to start thinking about how we're going to evaluate the program, and when we're thinking about the methods and ways to which to conduct the program, we're going to think about alternatives and some constraints that may happen, some roadblocks that may happen that will impede our progress. So let's go back to the methods of conducting the program. These are the actual procedures of carrying out oral health promotion programs to achieve the program objectives. So we're going to choose our oral health promotion program, and the way that we're going to go about conducting our oral health promotion program based on certain things, such as, is it practical within that community? Do we have the financial and manpower resources to be able to conduct that particular method within our oral health promotion program? Is it effective? Is there evidence that backs up that our oral health promotion program and the way that we're going to conduct it is going to actually eradicate or decrease the disease that's within the community? And then we're also going to think about community acceptance. Will the community accept the way that you're going to go about decreasing caries within their community? Or is there some kind of philosophical argument that the community members have ingrained into themselves where they don't want that particular way to decrease the caries within that community? So let's think about our outcome objective that we discussed in the previous video, which was by 2020, no more than 10% of the population aged 6 to 17 years old in Toothtown will have lost any teeth as a result of caries. So there are different ways that we can go about reducing the amount of teeth that are extracted or that are lost because of carious lesions and being bombed out teeth. So there are different ways that we could go about reducing that type of disease within the community. So I've listed here 3 different ways that just came to my mind. These 3 different ways here are not the it's not all that we can do. So there are multiple other ways that we can go about achieving the reduction of teeth that are lost as a result of caries. So I don't want you to think that this list is comprehensive. So one way we could do is that our health department could hire a dental hygienist, and that dental hygienist would go into the school system, all the elementary schools, all the middle schools, and all the high schools, and they can administer and implement a mouth rinse program or a mouth fluoride varnish program within schools. That's one way that we can reduce the amount of teeth that are lost from caries. Another way is that our health department could have contracts with all of the schools within their district, and with that contract they identify a person that will administer an oral health promotion project within that school, and the health department would oversee those programs. So the health department is giving the schools a little bit more autonomy in terms of who's going to be hired, or if there's someone that's already an employee of that particular school and they're going to implement the program within that school. Or finally, we could have the health department and they could rely on teachers and parent volunteers. So each class in a school is going to either have a teacher or a parent volunteer that actually goes about and implements the oral health promotion program. So there are 3 different ways, and like I said, this list is not comprehensive. There are multiple other ways that we could go about decreasing the tooth loss as a result of caries. So we need to think about constraints, which are reasons why something cannot be done in a certain way. So we need to think about identifying roadblocks or obstacles that may impede us from achieving a certain goal or objective. So one of the reasons that we want to identify these roadblocks or constraints early on in the planning stages is that if we identify it early, then we're not going to invest too much time or money into our oral health promotion program and get too far invested into that, and we can change it fairly easily and make it a more practical or realistic plan. So community involvement is essential in overcoming these roadblocks. And like I said previously, whenever you contact and you work with the community leaders, they're going to have insider knowledge about community structures and the politics and the economics. So that's going to be very beneficial for you, and they can tell you what might work and what won't work based on this insider knowledge, and hopefully they can offer you some alternative solutions to help you meet your goals. So lack of funding is a very common constraint with community dental health promotion programs. Money, money, money. We just don't have enough of it, unfortunately. Some other common constraints within the community dental health promotion programs: professional organizations may not be on board, and this doesn't mean just dentist and dental hygiene professional organizations. We could come in conflict with other professional organizations. We could have some of those structural barriers such as inadequate transportation or lack of facilities. We could have personnel shortages, especially if we're relying on volunteers. If you're relying on volunteers, you really have to kind of bend to their schedule and when they're available to help implement your health promotion program. Over or underestimating the time commitment to do your health promotion program is a big constraint as well. So especially if you underestimate and you can't achieve what you want to achieve in the time period that you have set forth. And then finally, the Dental Practice Act. So this details our scope of practice in each particular state. So it tells us as dental hygienists what we can and we can't do, and what our license allows us to do within that state. So in the state of Kentucky and certain other, let me backtrack. I think it's in the state of Kentucky, but I know it's in multiple states throughout the United States. A dental hygienist cannot place a sealant unless a dentist has ordered it on a treatment plan. And it's simply because the attitude is that they don't want dental hygienists to diagnose caries, and they don't want us to seal over decay. So they don't, in my opinion, trust our professional opinions regarding decay and what's beneficial for that particular child. So, our Dental Practice Act in certain states kind of prohibit that. So, if you wanted to conduct a sealant program in those particular states, you're going to have a dentist on board that evaluates each particular child before you can go and place a sealant. And that particular dentist is going to have to say, yes, dental hygienist Jennifer, you can go and you can seal teeth number 3, 14, 15, 18, 19, and 30, but you can't seal number 31 or 2 because it has decay on it. So that's kind of where the Dental Practice Act is definitely a constraint with some oral health promotion projects. So then if we identify constraints, then we can start thinking about alternative ways that we can achieve our goal and our objectives. So remember, our objective was to decrease the tooth loss in Toothtown as a result of decay. So we would have to think about our original method, what we really wanted to do. So let's say our original method was we wanted to, as a health department, we wanted to hire a dental hygienist. And that dental hygienist, he or she is going to go into the dental or into the school systems and implement a school fluoride mouth rinse or a varnish program. So let's say that original method is not going to work because of some type of constraint previously listed. Then we have to think about alternative ways that we could go about doing what we want to do. So some alternatives, if the community is not does not have community water fluoridation, then perhaps we could go that route and work with the leaders in the water company to increase dental or community water fluoridation. Maybe if we can't hire a dental hygienist through the health department, maybe we could consider school water fluoridation or fluoride supplements, or maybe we can consider topical fluoride treatments. If those are too ambitious, or if our resources limit, especially financial resources limit some of these different alternative ways, then maybe we could go and start doing something like policy changes in terms of school diets. So what is each school serving the children during breakfast and lunch? Or maybe we could do a media program and do TV spots or radio spots where we highlight the dental problem that's within that community. And then, of course, dental health education is a part of each one of these, honestly. So once we kind of get our method and we think about what is going to happen and how we're going to achieve our objectives and goals, we're going to implement. This is the fourth stage of the dental hygiene process of care. So we're actually just putting that plan into action. And in the planning steps, we're going to identify each step needed to accomplish our goals and our objectives. When we're implementing the program, I don't want you to think that we can't make changes or adjustments during the time that we're implementing. So remember our formative evaluation, we're constantly gathering data and clues during the implementation phase of our oral health promotion program, simply because if we catch wind early on in our implementation phase that something's not going so well, then we can make changes to accommodate for those things that are not going very well. I put pilot program in that orangish yellow font here simply because this is past boards. They kind of like the pilot programming idea on boards. So basically a pilot program is a trial run. So you would implement your program on a much smaller scale than what you'll eventually implement your program on. So it's like a trial run. So this is a very first common step in community health programs, and the reasoning behind doing a pilot program is so that you can identify all these roadblocks and constraints and fine tune and make those changes and adjustments so that when you implement on a much larger scale, it will be smooth sailing. So who here has gone, let's say you're going to someplace new and you've never been there before, and you're going there, it's an important appointment that you're going to. Who here in this class has actually made a trial run, and like the night before or the weekend before, they've actually kind of mapped out how they're going to get to where they're going and where to park, and maybe even actually driven to the place so that they know where it all is before that important date that you have in your calendar. You're actually doing kind of a trial run or a pilot program on a much smaller scale there. So remember, our first method was to hire a dental hygienist. So if we continued that methodology, and the health department did hire a dental hygienist, we're going to have to think about all of the steps of hiring a dental hygienist and then having that dental hygienist go into the school system. The very first step is to find funding. To hire someone at $25 to $30 to $35 an hour, we're going to have to find funding to be able to pay the dental hygienist. Not only are we going to have to pay the dental hygienist, we're going to have to think about the cost of the fluoride varnish or the mouth rinse. We're going to have to think about the cost of supplies. We're going to have to think about the travel for the dental hygienist. So once we kind of figure out the funding aspect, we're going to look at hiring policies for the health department, and we're going to have to make sure that we hire appropriately. Once we figure all that out, then we're going to have to advertise and interview dental hygienists. And then once we whittle down our applicant pool and we hire someone, then we're going to have to train them on the specifics of what the program entails and what our expectations are for that dental hygienist. So once all of that kind of planning type of stuff happens, and once the dental hygienist is trained, then they can go out into the field and implement that mouth rinse or the fluoride varnish program. If we went another route and picked the other method of training the teachers or parent volunteers, we still have to plan out all of that before we can implement. So basically, we'd have to find someone in the health department that can actually train the teachers or the parents who are volunteering to be the administrators of this particular program. So once we find that person within the health department, then we're going to have to have that person say, this is the time, this is the when and the where that I'm going to be able to train you. And typically they're going to actually have to have multiple training times and sessions. Then that person's going to have to prepare orientation material. So they're going to have to think about how they're going to teach these teachers or parents how to apply the fluoride varnish or the mouth rinse program. So they may have to run off papers, or they may have to prepare PowerPoint or those type of things. And then you're going to have to advertise and notify people of those training dates and times. You're going to have to logistically keep a track of who's gone through the training and who is going to be certified to be able to implement the mouth rinse program within the schools. Once all of this is done, then you can start your implementation, and that volunteer, the teacher volunteer or the parent volunteer, can actually go into the classroom and implement the fluoride mouth rinse or varnish program. Once we implement, we're evaluating. So not only are we evaluating throughout the implementation, we're going to do a formal evaluation at the very end of our program. And the purposes behind this is we want to see whether we met our objectives or not. So that's just basically evaluating whether our program was effective or not. If we're doing a formative assessment in terms of evaluation, then we're going to identify some of these roadblocks or the problems that occurred. And then summatively, we're going to evaluate the objectives there. Once we kind of get all of this data in the evaluation phase, if we were successful, that data is so rich and it carries a lot of weight. So if our program was successful, then we can hopefully get additional funding through outside resources to continue our health promotion program on, or to expand our oral health promotion program. So how we go about doing our evaluation is really dependent, especially a summative evaluation, is really dependent upon our objectives. So if we are evaluating a decrease of any oral health disease, not just caries, we're going to do something like a clinical screening. Right? So we're going to utilize some of those indices. If we want to know if knowledge or value systems or behaviors have changed, then we may want to summatively evaluate by questionnaire. We're always doing evaluation efforts. It's very continuous. So I don't want you to get the impression that we just do it at the very end. We're doing it throughout as well as the end of a program. So if we get data that is similar to the needs assessment phase, the very first baseline data, then we can compare apples to apples and we can say, yes, we were successful. If you gather data in a way that is not similar to how you gather data during your needs assessment phase, the phase 1, then you really can't make too many conclusions about how successful you were or not. In terms of quantitative versus qualitative data, quantitative data is typically the more noted types of data to collect, simply because there's powers and numbers and whatnot. So if you do a pre and a post test or survey, then you can kind of evaluate and do some number crunching there and some statistical analysis to see if you were successful. Or you could do the dental indices as well. So if your community had an OHIS a 5.2 and then it dropped down to a 2.0, then you can make some significant conclusions there. Qualitative data, remember that's kind of the rich verbal data that you can gather, and it really is great in assessing attitudes and value systems. And we can gather that from like interviews or personal statements or surveys whenever we do those open-ended types of questions. So I've been talking about formative versus summative evaluation. These terms should be very, very familiar to you from oral health education. Just remember the formative evaluation is internal. It's happening during implementation, and it's really evaluating whether the program is running smoothly or if changes are needed. So in my traditional classroom, when we're meeting within a classroom, I do my formative evaluations through iClickers. So, if there's a big concept that I just talked about, I want to do an iClicker question so that I know that the entire class or most of the class is on the same page and they understand that concept. Summative evaluation, on the other hand, evaluates the success of the program after it's occurred. So were the objectives accomplished? So in the academic world, we have student end of the semester evaluation. So you evaluate the class. at the end of the semester, and we can see if those objectives that we established beforehand were accomplished. Personally, I look at board scores in my sections. So if, let's say, for instance, last year's class that just took the national boards, if I see a significant drop in my board scores, then I know something was up with that class and how I presented the material that year. So then I can do an assessment of myself and make changes as they are appropriate. So we want our evaluation methods to be valid. We want them to be reliable. So those are the two terms. You saw those in oral health education. You're seeing them again in this particular class in terms of the indices. And we want our evaluation to also be valid and reliable. So remember, the definitions of validity is that we're measuring what we're supposed to be measuring, and reliability is all about consistency. So we're producing the same results on a consistent basis. So if I were to survey somebody today and then survey them tomorrow and didn't do an intervention between today and tomorrow, I should get about the same scores on that survey, honestly. And I have this in bold and italicized because I want to say that each stated objective that you have for your oral health promotion program, it has to be measured, it has to be evaluated. You can't, at the end of the day, say, oh, I made all these objectives, but I don't really care about them anymore, so I'm just going to shove them to the side. You can't do that. You have to evaluate whether your program has met them or not. And that's why the planning phase is pretty critical. So typically in the class, what I do is we get into groups and we read the scenario, and then we kind of think through the dental hygiene process of care and how we would go about kind of solving this problem. So what I want you to do at home before your next exam is I want you to read this scenario, and then I want you to think about if you were the person that is developing an oral health promotion program, how would you go about doing it in the assessment phase? How would you go about doing the diagnosing? How would you go about doing the planning phase? Of course, you can't implement at this point, but I want you to think about how you would go about evaluating. So you've been asked to serve on the decision-making board for the community elementary school. The school nurse has some concerns about the general health of many of the students, resulting from poor nutrition. As a fellow health professional, he has asked you to help him in assessing the extent of the problem and establishing one or more programs to help alleviate the problem, the poor nutrition. So what assessment information will you gather, and how are you going to go about gathering that? From that information, how are you going to prioritize the needs and then create the goals and objectives? How are you going to plan that out in terms of meeting those objectives? How are you going to evaluate? What are some constraints and some alternatives that you could think about? And then are you going to collect qualitative data, or are you going to collect quantitative data? And then in terms of formative assessments and evaluations, how are you going to conduct those compared to your summative evaluation? So think about that. There's a million different ways that you could go about doing that. You could do a nutrition diary and then go from there. You can look and see what the school serves and go from there. You can look at the lesson plans that the teachers do in regards to nutrition and then go from there. So there are multiple different ways that you can go about implementing an oral health promotion program in that particular situation. So we've been through the entire process of care and how to develop an oral health promotion program. And hopefully in the future, if it is your calling, you will maybe start thinking about the deficits that we have in our current oral health promotion programs that are out there. And I know that you all are creative and you all are the future of dentistry and dental hygiene. So, if you feel the calling and to do so, I really challenge you to be able to create these programs so that our entire community can become healthier overall. So I wanted to wrap up by telling you my personal reason why. And I wish for each and every single one of you, my students, to really find your why, your reason why that keeps you going and that keeps you passionate about dentistry or dental hygiene or whatever you end up doing in life. If you have that passion, then it's not ever going to really feel like work, and you will not feel like you're really working overall, and then hopefully you won't get burned out as well. My reason why is simply something, how to say this, my reason why and my passion that drives me is epitomized by the boy in this picture. And I don't know if you all recognize him or if you know his story. But his story represents so many children within America. And it's an unfortunate story, unfortunately. This is Mr. Diamante Driver. He was 12 years old when he passed away in February 2007. He was from Baltimore. And unfortunately, his family really had some hard times. They were in and out of homeless shelters, and they were a Medicaid family. And with Medicaid, when you sign up for Medicaid, you have to have like a valid address, and that's how they communicate with you at the time, in particular Prince George County of Baltimore. And because the Driver family was in and out of homeless shelters, they didn't have a permanent address, so Medicaid dropped them. That was just their policies. So anyways, the Driver family had an attorney from the Public Justice Center of Baltimore, and the attorney was very helpful to Mrs. Driver because the older brother, Deshaun, actually had some dental issues, and this attorney was helping Miss Driver kind of navigate Medicaid and dental care. And the attorney actually made more than 20 calls in order to find a dentist that accepted Medicaid within Prince George County. I'm sorry, if I said Medicare previously, I meant Medicaid. So once, this attorney became involved in the Driver family, for Deshaun, Diamante became ill as well. So he started having really, really bad headaches. And he was taken to the hospital, the ER, for these really just horrible headaches. Diamante became sicker, and as a result, he had 2 brain surgeries. 2, not 1, 2 brain surgeries. All because of an abscess tooth. If that abscess tooth had been caught early, extracting Diamante's tooth could have cost $80. The bill for 2 weeks of his care at Maryland Children's Hospital was between $200,000 and $250,000. At the time of his death, only about 900 of the dentists of Maryland's 5,500 dentists accepted Medicaid. So about 1/5, a little under 20% of the dentists within Maryland accepted Medicaid. So, unfortunately, the sad part about it is that Diamante couldn't get into the dentist, and if he would have gotten into the dentist early on, then this beautiful boy could have been still with us. And who knows what his potential was in our life. So as a result of Diamante's story, some light has been shed on this issue. And in Maryland in particular, there's been some significant changes, but there's always work to be done. There's a mobile clinic that bears Diamante's name that treats poor children in Prince George's County, and it started a few years ago. And now kiddos are, if they go to their medical doctors, their pediatricians, now more and more those pediatricians are giving kids fluoride treatments as a preventive measure. And almost 40% of kiddos with Medicaid have received some dental care throughout Maryland. So that's an increase there. But still, 60% of the kids that are on Medicaid, I think I keep saying Medicare and I apologize, it's Medicaid. There's still 60% of those children that are on Medicaid that are not receiving dental care. So there is work to be done so that we can hopefully not have this happen again to a child. This child he did not ask to be born into the circumstances that he was born into. And it is my heartfelt opinion, and it may not be shared by you, and that's completely fine, but it is my heartfelt opinion that the system failed this little boy, and I find that to be very unfortunate. So that's why I'm so passionate about public health and doing right by people. And hopefully this is a very dire circumstance and a very dire story. And most people don't die because of this, but it certainly is a possibility. And I hate to see that when we could do something else within our society and not have people die from dental disease. So now that I'm crying and poured my heart out to you, my hope for you is to find your reason why, find your passion, find your story to keep you going, whether it's in public health, whether it's in research, whether it's just in clinical dental hygiene. All of that, we need people in every single segment of all of those aspects of dental hygiene. And one is not superior to another. So, I want you to find your passion is the moral of the story. And if you find your passion, then you don't have to work a day in your life. With that being said, your ticket out of this lecture and out of Community Dental Health 1 is, if you go to Socrative.com, the room name is CDH1 Lecture 10. It has been a pleasure. I have to be completely honest. I really much prefer to have this class in person so that we can have these conversations instead of it being like a one-sided conversation with me talking to my computer. But hopefully you have gained different perspectives throughout the semester and maybe a newfound appreciation for all aspects of dentistry. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and I'm always here for you, and I will see you at our final meeting, and that will be a Teams meeting. So I'll send you an invitation through Teams, and I'll see you right before the last exam. Take care now. Bye-bye.